Live from New Delhi, you're watching DD India News Hour, India's voice to the world. I'm Ramesh Ramachandran. Coming up in the next hour, U.S. Secretary of State to meet Arab foreign ministers and a top Palestinian official in Cairo, even as Israel's Prime Minister says the Gaza war will continue. World leaders gather in Belgium for the first ever nuclear energy summit to discuss about reducing the use of fossil fuels and reaching net zero. India's ruling party leader Jitendra Singh files his nomination from Udhampur in Jammu and Kashmir. Opposition Congress Party releases list of candidates for Arunachal Pradesh. And after boosting migration numbers in 2022 to help businesses after the pandemic, now Australia tightens student visas as migration from Asia hits a record high. First up, news from West Asia. U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken arrived in Egypt on Thursday as he continues his visit to West Asia. Blinken is scheduled to meet with the foreign ministers of Egypt, Saudi Arabia, Qatar and Jordan, the UAE's international cooperation minister and a top Palestinian official in Cairo. The meeting will see the leaders discuss a pause in fighting between Israel and Hamas in the Gaza Strip. Earlier, plans had been put on hold as mediators from Qatar, Egypt and the US sought to secure a deal for a ceasefire. Earlier on Wednesday, Blinken met with his Saudi counterpart along with Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman as efforts continue to secure a ceasefire in Gaza. Vinod Kumar joins us from Dubai for more on this developing story. Vinod, who will join these talks in Cairo and what's on its agenda? Vinod, are you with us? Can you hear me? We'll try to link up with Vinod in Dubai in just a bit. Vinod, can you hear me? Are you with us? Vinod, if you can hear me, who will join these talks in Cairo and what is on its agenda?
Hi Ramesh, at the Cairo, Antony Blinken will meet the foreign ministers of Egypt, Saudi Arabia, Qatar and Jordan, as you mentioned. And along with him, he'll be meeting the Emirati Minister of Cooperation. Also, the most important person I would say that he'll be meeting will be is Hussein al-Sheikh, the Secretary General of the Palestinian Liberation Organization. He's the one who is pushing for a truce between Israel and Hamas in the Gaza Strip, and he is considered as a rising star in this Middle East when it confers to the Israel and Palestinian war. The agenda can be detailed as a four-pronged proposal. One, the proposal for a political resolution for the Palestinian conflict, ceasefire in Gaza, and the release of Israeli hostages and Palestinian prisoners. The fourth one is the one which gives an optimism that the war might be going to end, that the arrangements for governance, security, and the redevelopment of post-conflict Gaza. This agenda item is going to give some sense of optimism that the war is going to end. Recently, Blinken had met his counterparts in Saudi Arabia and the Crown Prince in Saudi Arabia, and there he made a very poignant statement that he said that the gaps between the Israel and the Arab front has been narrowing. That the negotiations which was carried with Qatar, Egypt, and Israel is bearing some fruits. And in the meeting that he also said that they had made a blueprint on how this war is going to end. And the terms of this blueprint at this point, Hamas have not completely agreed. The terms that he put forward to Israel Prime Minister also has not gone to fruition.
Right.
But at the same time, some optimism is there that this war might be ending within another month or so.
Also, Vinod, is there a consensus among Arab nations on the way forward?
Definitely, the consensus among the Arab nation is resolute and unwavering. Last month at the International Court of Justice at Hague, the Arab League spokesperson, Arab League is also based out of Cairo, has made a very important statement that the impunity enjoyed by the Israel in the Palestine is a threat to the international peace and stability, as well as appalling. The UAE ambassador to the United States has also meant that there is a strong consensus that there has to be a proper redevelopment plan and irreversible progression for having a two-state solution. The statement was issued by Lana Nusibia during the World Government Summit. This shows that there is a strong consensus. And let me take you at a slight deviation. The Arab Center for Research and Policy, based out of Qatar, had made a survey last month. This is a public survey. This is not a survey among the politicians. This is a public survey, and which stated that 92% of the Arab people believe that Hamas is completely different from the Palestinian. That Hamas doesn't represent the Palestinian cause, and there has to be a completely divorced opinion about these two entities. And at this point, it is very clear to emphasize that is there a consensus between Washington and Tel Aviv, because Biden has already given a red line of what Israel should progress in the Rafah border, that if there is an escalation in Rafah, then the humanitarian catastrophe would be unprecedented. So the question is very important, but at the same time that we have to have a reflection whether Tel Aviv and Washington is having a consensus.
Indeed. All right. We leave it at that. Vinod Kumar reporting there from Dubai. Thank you. Appreciate it. Meanwhile, the Israeli army found Hamas's weapons, money and operatives during a raid at Gaza's Al-Shifa hospital. The Israeli military released a video on Wednesday that showed its soldiers uncovering rifles and a rocket launcher. It claimed that more than 50 Palestinian gunmen were killed and 180 suspected militants detained during the raid on the hospital. The Israeli raid began in the early hours of Monday. Israel had sent in its special forces based on intelligence that the hospital was again being used by Hamas. Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu on Wednesday said that the Rafah operation will take some time as preparations were underway for the invasion of Rafah in the southern Gaza Strip. Netanyahu has approved the military's operational plans for Rafah. He said that he will soon approve a plan for the evacuation of civilians from fighting areas.
I want you to know that I've already approved the IDF's operational plan. And soon we will also approve the plan to evacuate the civilian population from the battle zones. As we are preparing to enter Rafah, and this will take a little time, we are continuing to operate with full force. We are continuing to operate in Khan Yunis, in the camps in the center, in eliminating and capturing senior Hamas officials, as we have just done in Shifa, and in eliminating hundreds of terrorists.
Netanyahu also said that Israel will continue its efforts to defeat the Hamas terrorists in the Gaza Strip.
I made it supremely clear to the US President Joe Biden in our conversation that we are determined to complete the elimination of these Hamas battalions in Rafah, and there is no way to do it except by going in on the ground.
And my colleague Sarah Coates joins us from Tel Aviv. Sarah, what's the situation at the Al-Shifa hospital?
Hello there, Ramesh. We do understand that this operation is ongoing. You mentioned that Israeli troops stormed that hospital early Monday morning. We are hearing now unconfirmed reports that the military is warning people over loudspeakers to evacuate that hospital, threatening to blow it up. What we can tell you is that there are still many people, displaced Palestinians, sheltering inside that hospital. The military had been saying that it wasn't targeting doctors, patients or any equipment, but accounts from the ground do suggest that a number of people have been detained. Now, yesterday the military gave an operational update saying that it had killed 90 terrorists. That number since that storming of the hospital has now gone up to 140, although Hamas claims that many of these were not its fighters, saying that the dead people are in fact civilians who were sheltering inside that hospital. Also, the military has questioned hundreds of people and brought some 160 others back here to Israel for further interrogation. So certainly a worrying scene, given that this is the largest hospital in the Gaza Strip. It's only recently begun functioning in a semi kind of way over the last month or so. And certainly, you know, we are hearing of heavy fighting in the vicinity of this compound. So, of course, certainly very concerning given that there are displaced people sheltering there.
Indeed. Also, what can you tell us about the evacuation of civilians from Rafah before an anticipated Israeli military operation there?
This is certainly something that will be discussed between the Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and the US Secretary of State Antony Blinken when he arrives here in Israel tomorrow. This has really been a point of contention between Washington and Israel. Washington has been saying that an operation in Rafah is a red line. Israel says it will happen, vowing to dismantle the last Hamas battalion that it says is hiding there, potentially with these Hamas leaders in these tunnels underneath Rafah, surrounded by Israeli captives. We heard from the Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu yesterday to say that preparations for this operation will take some time, but he says he will soon approve this plan as to how to get these some 1.3 million internally displaced Palestinians that are sheltering in Rafah out. But this, of course, is causing a lot of concern with regards to the logistics of how this would all happen and where these people would actually go. We've previously heard from the IDF spokesperson Daniel Hagari, who says that Israel plans to move these people to these so-called humanitarian islands in the centre of the Strip, saying they'd be provided with temporary housing, food and water. But really that statement was very, very vague. And given the fact that people don't really have cars or petrol in the Gaza Strip, it remains unknown as to how these people would actually move once again to the centre of the Strip and what would be there waiting for them. So this, of course, is very, very worrying, and this is why we are seeing so much international pressure being put on Israel to hold off on this operation.
Sarah, thank you. Appreciate it. There was Sarah Coates reporting from Tel Aviv. And staying in the region, several countries have continued to airdrop food into Gaza despite the challenging circumstances. As aid through road and sea routes remains slow, flights provide a lifeline for the people in Gaza. DD India's Alex Cadier reports from Jordan.
Well, the United Nations has warned that tens of thousands of people in Gaza could be facing famine in a matter of weeks if things don't change. And like here with the Royal Jordanian Air Force, for days now they have been trying to airdrop supplies into the Gaza Strip. This particular C-130 Hercules aircraft is loaded with 8 tons of food, of baby powder, of anything that these starving families in Gaza could need. But they recognize that this aircraft can only carry about half a truck's worth of supplies. And we know that Gaza needs 500 trucks on a daily basis. So they are doing what they can, but some of the crews operating these flights recognize that this is just a drop in the bucket. Alex Cadier in Jordan, reporting for DD India.
And shifting focus away from West Asia to Europe now, amidst the ongoing Russia-Ukraine conflict. The recent Russian missile attack on Kyiv on Thursday injured at least 10 people and damaged the city's infrastructure. The attacks allegedly targeted the city with both ballistic and cruise missiles. Kyiv's Mayor Vitaly Klitschko said that missile debris hit several residential buildings, industrial sites and a kindergarten in the city. Ukraine's air defenses shot down 31 Russian missiles targeting the capital city of Kyiv, including 29 cruise missiles and 2 ballistic missiles. The air defense commander Mykola Oleshchuk announced it on Thursday. U.S. National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan said during a visit to Kyiv on Wednesday that a major U.S. aid package that has been blocked by lawmakers from the opposition Republican Party for months would get to Ukraine, and vowed that Washington, D.C.'s support will continue.
We have stood by your side since this war began. We have provided enormous support, and we will continue to do so every day in every way we know how. Now, I know there are questions here because of the back and forth in our Congress in the months that have gone by without the supplemental bill coming through, the package of aid that you rightly deserve and that President Biden is fighting for every day, the $60 billion that the Senate has passed on a bipartisan basis, and now we're working with the House to pass. But from our perspective, we are confident we will get this done. We will get this aid to Ukraine.
Still to come on DD India News Hour. Voters in the US are deeply divided over who is best placed to lead the country, with concerns over the economy, reproductive rights and immigration topping the agenda. Leo Varadkar unexpectedly steps down as Ireland's Prime Minister, says the country's coalition government stands a better chance of re-election under another leader. And Portugal's president names Luís Montenegro, head of the centre-right Democratic Alliance, as the country's new Prime Minister and invites him to form a minority government.
How does the world's largest democracy hold the world's biggest election? Watch Connecting the Dots to get the full picture. Every Friday at 8 p.m. IST on DD India.
You're watching DD India News Hour. I'm Ramesh Ramachandran. Brussels is all set to host the first ever global nuclear summit on Thursday. Leaders will gather to highlight nuclear energy's role in driving sustainable development. The summit will be co-chaired by Belgium's Prime Minister and the Director General of the International Atomic Energy Agency. The summit comes in the wake of the historic inclusion of nuclear energy in the global stocktake agreed at COP28 in Dubai in December last year. And Ishan Garg now joins us from Brussels. Ishan, who all are expected to take part in the summit?
Well, this is going to be a very large summit. We are understanding that about 20 government agencies, dozens of executives and also many heads of nuclear agency boards from across the world are gathering here. And of course, as you pointed out, it's being chaired by the Belgian Prime Minister. Belgium also holds currently the presidency, the rotating presidency of the European Council. So this is very much putting the idea of nuclear energy as a sustainable source of energy for a greener climate in the future. very much on the agenda, not only for the European Union, but also globally. And we are expecting rounds and rounds of conversations, several discussions with very huge panels here in Brussels that are going to drill down deeply into how nuclear energy can be used for sustainable future, how it can lead to a greener and cleaner climate in the next few decades.
Ishan, what does the summit hope to achieve in terms of deliverables or tangible outcomes from those talks there?
Well, one of the biggest tangible outcomes that this summit will hope to achieve is to put the idea of nuclear energy back on the map as a sustainable source of energy. In the past few years, we have seen several ideas being floated globally, including electric energy, hydropower, wind and solar energy. But many experts have felt that the nuclear energy has fallen behind in that list of fuels that can potentially be used for sustainable power. So the summit is mainly looking at promoting that idea once again, and especially coming after discussions were held exactly on the same subject last year at the COP28 Global Climate Summit. That's the first outcome this summit is hoping to achieve. Secondly, there's obviously going to be the idea of how can various countries come together to build cohesive nuclear frameworks, because the idea is also to push for civil uses of nuclear power, while at the same time hoping to contain the more destructive forces of nuclear power. And finally, there's going to be the idea and discussions about how can nuclear energy be financed, especially for developing countries, because that is a big challenge, not only for huge countries like India or for, say, Indonesia, but also for the European Union, how to pay for all those all that infrastructure that requires. So all of these things are going to be on the agenda at the summit.
Ishan, thank you. Ishan Garg reporting there from Brussels. Moving on, the United States is set to have its first presidential rematch in 70 years, with President Joe Biden and former President Donald Trump securing their candidature for a face-off. But voters are deeply divided over who is best placed to lead the country. Concerns over the economy, reproductive rights and immigration top people's minds. Worries over who will win the Oval Office have been dubbed as election anxiety by psychologists. DD India's Sally Patterson reports from New York City.
There's déjà vu in Washington, D.C. US President Joe Biden and former President Donald Trump are set to go head-to-head, vying once again for the White House. Last time round, in 2020, so-called election anxiety gripped the nation. For many, those feelings could now be flooding back.
I think that there's multiple layers of election anxiety. Obviously, many people have anxiety over what will be the outcome of the election. But another issue that I see coming up for people a lot is actually just anxiety about election season, because there can be so much interpersonal conflict. So even talking about the election or arguments, or what if they disagree with somebody, that type of anxiety I think is also very prevalent.
Some Americans are seeking ways of coping with the stresses of election season, be it through altering their news intake or even seeking mental health support. Others are taking more drastic measures, with applications for second citizenships really taking off.
There are some people that are looking for a plan B. They are looking for a place where they can relocate. They are looking for a place where they can send children for education. They would like to go for resident investment program. Among them, the most popular ones are Spain, Portugal, Greece, European options.
Since the COVID-19 pandemic, latitude groups seen a spike in interest from the United States. Managing Director Christopher Willis tells me he's seen an over 300% increase as the country heads towards the election.
Depending where people sit and where their values are, it could be things such as, another mass shooting. It could be to deal with, taxes on the wealthy, for example. There's recent announcements regarding Roe versus Wade, which triggered a lot of people as being a reason why they want to look at different options. So people are just getting nervous in general, and so they want to make sure that if things go a way that they're not comfortable with, they have an option to go somewhere else.
Many clients invest overseas. Others qualify for citizenship by descent. Natalie Bloomberg is looking into her Polish ancestry. Her father moved to the US after World War II. Now she thinks European citizenship could give herself and her children more opportunities.
I love to travel, and so I think, there's this wanderlust, and with the political situation now and people's tensions are up, I always think, well, history might repeat itself, and it's good to have options.
Worries are particularly high among certain demographics. Young people, for example, and immigrants on temporary visas.
More than 2/3 of US adults say the 2020 presidential election was a significant source of stress in their lives, according to the American Psychological Association. The prospect of this year's two-man race, for many voters here, means an all too familiar, anxious road ahead. Sally Patterson in New York, reporting for GD India.
Across the Atlantic in Europe, Portugal's president has named Luís Montenegro, head of the centre-right Democratic Alliance, as the country's new prime minister and invited him to form a minority government. The alliance won a parliamentary election on 10th March by a slim margin, far short of a working majority. 51-year-old Montenegro has repeatedly said that his party is prepared to govern on its own and will not negotiate with the far-right party Chega to work together. After being named premier, Montenegro said the government would be sworn in on the 2nd of April. To the Indo-Pacific now, Australia will begin enforcing tougher visa rules for foreign students this week as official data showed another record high migration. The sudden influx of foreign workers and students, primarily from Asian countries, has exacerbated pressure on an already tight rental market. Australia is set to introduce a new genuine student test to further crack down on international students travelling to Australia primarily to work. The decision follows a raft of actions last year to close off COVID-era concessions introduced by the former government, which included unrestricted working hours for international students. All right, now take a look at some more stories making news around the world. Cuba's second largest city of Santiago was hit with further blackouts on Wednesday after protests broke out across the Caribbean nation against blackouts and food shortages in the country on Sunday. The government said that it expected blackouts to remain acute through the week. Vietnam's legislature on Thursday approved the resignation of President Vo Van Thong. The 53-year-old resigned on Wednesday amid an intensified anti-graft crackdown by the ruling Communist Party. He is the second president to resign in just over a year in Vietnam. The resurgence of Somali pirates is piling risks and costs onto shipping companies. More than 20 attempted hijackings since November last year have driven up prices for armed security guards and insurance coverage, and also raised the spectre of possible ransom payments. British singer-songwriter duo Elton John and Bernie Taupin were honored with the prestigious Library of Congress Gershwin Prize for Popular Song in Washington, D.C. The duo were celebrated for their partnership achievements and contributions to popular music. Still to come on DD India News Hour. A discussion on U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken's visit to West Asia to push for a truce between Israel and Hamas. Will he succeed this time? We find out. The U.S. recognizes Arunachal Pradesh as India's territory amid China's claims. And a report on the logistics behind the world's largest election in India, which has more than 968 million voters.
Wherever news breaks, whatever it takes.
Connecting corners, cutting across continents.
Stories that matter from across the globe.
Accurate, authentic journalism that serves you right. From politics to glamour, from sports to world affairs, with a fusion of aesthetics and substance. Introducing news in a new avatar. Experience the world through a new lens. Stay tuned to DD India for an exciting journey beyond borders.
You're watching DD India News Hour. I'm Ramesh Ramachandran. A quick recap of the headlines. U.S. Secretary of State to meet Arab foreign ministers and a top Palestinian official in Cairo, even as Israel's Prime Minister says the Gaza war will continue. World leaders gather in Belgium for the first ever nuclear energy summit to discuss about reducing the use of fossil fuels and reaching net zero. And India's ruling party leader Jitendra Singh filed his nomination from Udhampur in Jammu and Kashmir. Opposition Congress Party releases list of candidates for Arunachal Pradesh. All right, going back to the top story, U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken is to meet with Arab foreign ministers and a top Palestinian official in Cairo, Egypt, for a pause in fighting between Israel and Hamas. Now, this even as Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu tells U.S. lawmakers that the Gaza war will continue. Joining me is Professor Harsh Pant. Professor Pant is Vice President Studies and Foreign Policy at Observer Research Foundation. The ORF is a privately held think tank headquartered in New Delhi. Professor Pant, welcome to DD India News Hour. Good to have you on the show. Now, it's Blinken's sixth visit to West Asia. Will he succeed this time?
Well, I think he himself seems relatively hopeful that that sixth time might be the charm. He's saying that they are close, but we have had this position in the past as well, where the proposals and the counter proposals that the two sides have been offering each other have been rejected by one side or the other. And I think that's why the last time when the proposals was sent, Hamas had rejected them by making some certain demands that Israelis said they would not be able to fulfill, which was, I think, largely related around the number of prisoners that Israel had to release. So the question is, what is the basic minimum that both sides would agree to? And if that he's able to do, then I think Blinken would be successful. And he's, as you can see, rallying around the regional players in a way that perhaps shows that he's more comfortable than in the past, that this time might be, that a deal might be in the offing sometime soon.
Professor Pant, what will it take on the part of the stakeholders, Israel, Hamas, the Arab world and the US, to strike a deal on, one, a pause in the fighting, and two, the release of hostages, compromise, accommodations, statesmanship, or all of the above? And more importantly, do you see evidence of that?
Well, not at the moment. I think especially the two important stakeholders, Hamas and the Israelis, Netanyahu, they do not seem very comfortable with the kind of the contours of an agreement that have emerged. And one side or the other have been, going and sabotaging this process. Now, I think what one has to understand is that, look, Israel and Israel security will have to be safeguarded in ways that perhaps might be very difficult for the West and the regional players at this point in time to get an assurance from Israel about that, because that is for Israel. Those attacks have really changed their mental frame, the way they look at the region, the way they look at stakeholders, and the way they look at the compromises that have to be made. On the other hand, I think Hamas feels that they are, they have a particularly important moment as of now where they can showcase how crucial they are for any kind of an agreement. So I think they would also, they have already been broadening the base of that agreement by increasing the numbers of prisoners with every successive stage of the negotiations. So I think it's going to be a tough call for both sides. But as you were saying, it would need some kind of a statesmanship. I know one can understand. I mean, it's also very difficult to compare because there is a non-state actor at the Hamas that we are talking about, and of course the regional players. So what kind of a pressure these regional players can put on Hamas and get it to the negotiating table and then to an agreement, that will have to be seen. And I think ultimately this will also be about what kind of a regional security architecture we are going to see, where Israeli security can be guaranteed as well as the Palestinians, their state of affairs can be reassured.
Indeed. For his part, Netanyahu says the Gaza war will continue. How do you think that will go down with Israel's allies in the West? Do you think it complicates matters?
It does, and I think it does, particularly for the Democratic Party. It does, and therefore, I think when he made this statement, he was making that statement to the Republicans, Senate Republicans. So clearly, I think there is also a domestic political divide emerging in the US on this issue, and Biden has been put on a very sticky wicket by Mr. Netanyahu because Netanyahu is not relenting on the key demand that Biden has been making for some time. So now I think with Blinken there, that will also be part of the discussion. That I think at the end of the day, here is an administration in Washington that has given a wide cover to Mr. Netanyahu, often at the detriment of their own domestic political space. So therefore, how far do they want that to go? How far can Netanyahu take that for granted? So I think certainly the domestic political element of the US is going to be a very, very important part when Tony Blinken communicates, the red lines to Netanyahu. But certainly, I think there is an emerging sense within the Democratic Party, within Biden administration, at a time when Biden is fighting a very tough election campaign, and that this is certainly something that cannot continue forever, and therefore some kind of an arrangement has to come fast and furious.
And finally, Professor Pant, India clearly has stakes in West Asia peace. Now, would India be watching the developments carefully?
Absolutely. I think Indian government has been making this point very, very clearly that ultimately diplomacy and negotiations will have to be, the means through which you accumulate and accommodate each other's interests. And I think India's engagement in the region, as we know, India's role has been growing, India's profile has been growing, and most stakeholders in this, if you look at Egypt, you look at Saudis, UAE, Israel, they have been, trying to build a relationship with India that can respond to the challenges of the century. And therefore, the sooner this crisis gets over, the better it is for Indian interests, the better it is for the projects like IMEC, the better it is for regional security and regional economy. So I think that's something that India would be looking very, very carefully at how this unfolds. But unfortunately, at this point in time, India is not a direct stakeholder. So that means that it will have to work through its friends and partners in the region, and there are many partners that India has in the region.
Absolutely. Professor Pant, pleasure as always to talk to you. Thank you for your time. Much appreciated.
Thank you.
And moving on, the United States has said that there can be no ambiguity regarding the territorial sovereignty of India, regardless of baseless Chinese claims. The U.S. State Department on Wednesday said that it opposes any unilateral attempts by China to advance its territorial claims across the line of actual control, or the LAC. State Department's principal deputy spokesperson Vedant Patel said this days after the Chinese military reiterated its claim over the state following Prime Minister Narendra Modi's visit there.
The United States recognizes Arunachal Pradesh as Indian territory, and we strongly oppose any unilateral attempts to advance territorial claims by incursions or encroachments, military or civilian, across the line of actual control.
Right, let's now get you all the latest on the world's largest democratic election in India. India's Minister of State and BJP leader Jitendra Singh has filed his nomination from Udhampur constituency. He filed his nomination papers at Kathua and was accompanied by Union Jal Shakti Minister Gajendra Singh Shekhawat. Seat goes to the polls in the first phase on 19th of April. Public and party workers alike showed much enthusiasm for Singh along the route to file his nomination papers in Kathua. Earlier in the day, Jitendra Singh offered prayers at his residence in Jammu. Meanwhile, the BJP has announced election in charges and co-in charges in 3 states, which includes Rajasthan, Haryana and Andhra Pradesh. Vinay Sahasrabudhe has been made the election in charge of Rajasthan, Satish Punia in Haryana and Arun Singh has been made the election in charge in Andhra Pradesh. India's opposition party, the Congress, has declared its candidates on 10 out of 25 Lok Sabha seats in Rajasthan. This was decided in a Central Election Committee meeting held in New Delhi on Wednesday. The party is preparing to form an alliance with multiple regional parties for seats of Sikar, Dungarpur, Banswara and Nagaur. Meanwhile, the Congress party suffered yet another blow in Madhya Pradesh, where multiple party workers have joined the BJP on Thursday. A former Rewa MP Devraj Singh, along with former Mayor of Satna Pushkar Singh and a retired IG Ramlal, all joined the BJP. The Congress also released a list of candidates for Arunachal Pradesh. On Thursday, it released the list of 34 candidates in the state. Now, top leaders of the Congress party, including Party President Mallikarjun Kharge, Congress Parliamentary Party Chairperson Sonia Gandhi and lawmaker Rahul Gandhi, held a press conference in New Delhi on Thursday. Rahul Gandhi said that the party is facing financial constraints to run its election campaign.
We can do no campaign work. We cannot support our workers. We cannot support our candidates. Our leaders cannot fly from one part of the country to the other. Forget fly. They can't take a railway train.
And joining me is my colleague Dibyendu Mondal. Dibyendu, how is the election campaign shaping up? Fill us in on the latest. Also, is the opposition Congress party expected to announce its third list of candidates today?
Well, Ramesh, that's right. You know, the Congress is expected to release the full list of in fact, the third list which we are hearing will be of about 80 names when the Congress party will declare the list, maybe by this evening itself. But the Congress concluded its CWC last evening, after which the Congress decided on several candidates on the 80 seats that it is likely to declare by this evening. As we speak, the Congress have also already declared about 34 candidates from Arunachal Pradesh State Assembly elections, which will be simultaneously held with the general elections of 2024. Having said this, the campaign is shaping up and is picking up pace as we near to the first phase of the election, which is on the 19th of April. We have already seen some of the candidates filing the nomination papers to contest the general elections of 2024. As we just showed, MOS Jitendra Singh, who is a union minister in the Modi cabinet, in the centre, has already filed his nomination papers from Jammu, from the Kathua seat in Jammu, where he will be contesting the elections this time around. But also, there are other political parties that are also lining up to fill in their nomination papers to contest the election. The Congress also held a press conference just a while back where we've just played that the Congress is finding it difficult to contest elections because of the paucity of funds. The Congress also called for, a caste census if they come back to power. But after this announcement by the Congress party, it is facing internal dissent on this. The Congress senior leader Anand Sharma has already written a letter to the Congress President Mallikarjun Kharge asking that this is bizarre, saying that this is bizarre and something like this has to be taken down by the Congress party, and this is not something that will uplift India, but would rather it's rather a regressive step for India. The BJP is also, picking up its campaign. We just saw the Prime Minister of India and the top BJP leader, Narendra Modi, campaigning for 5 continuous days in the southern states of Tamil Nadu, Kerala, Andhra Pradesh, Telangana, and Tamil Nadu. Tamil Nadu, for that matter, will also go to polls in the first phase, and of course campaigns in the state of Tamil Nadu is picking up pace. The BJP is also expected to hold its CEC in the next couple of days, after which it will announce the list of the candidates, the remaining of the candidates that the party will be fielding for the general elections of 2024. Several of the states' core committee or the core group meeting has already been concluded by the BJP's top leadership, including JP Nadda and Amit Shah. And these names will be put forward to the CEC, which is the formal process for the finalizing of the names. And the CEC is expected to be held in a couple of days from now. So once all the names of the candidates are out, the campaign will be picking up pace. But of course, having said this, the first phase of election, which will see much of the Northeast completing its election by the 19th of April, the entire of Tamil Nadu, the entire of Uttarakhand. So these states will see more of campaigning, aggressive campaigning picking up in the next couple of days. Back to you.
All right, we'll leave it at that. Dibyendu, thank you. There was Dibyendu Mondal reporting on the latest from the election scenario. Now, conducting polls in India, which has over 968 million voters, is no mean feat. Our next report tells you more about the logistics behind the world's largest election.
968 million. That's the number of registered voters in India. It is more than the combined population of the United States and the European Union. In 2024, nearly 50 countries, including the US and Mexico, are going to polls. More than 2 billion voters will cast their ballots, and nearly half of them will be in India alone. The more you delve into numbers, you realize that conducting general elections in India is a mammoth exercise. India is the world's 7th largest country by land area, comprising 28 states and 8 union territories. The Election Commission will conduct the 2024 general elections to elect 543 lower house members in 7 phases from April 19th to June 1st. The results will be out on June 4th. Over 15 million election officials will be deployed across 1 million polling stations throughout the country. Over 5.5 million electronic voting machines will be used for the exercise. Of the total 968 million voters, 497 million are male, 471 million are female, while about 48,000 belong to the third gender. Also, nearly 18 million voters will exercise their franchise for the first time ever. Let's also take a look at the key statistics of the last Indian general elections that were held in 2019. There were over 900 million eligible voters, out of which 600 million people cast their ballots. The final turnout stood at over 67%, the highest ever for any general elections to date. Nearly 4 million electronic voting machines were deployed across 1 million polling stations, and over 8,000 candidates and 670 parties were in the fray. That's not all. The polls, which cost 600 billion rupees, are the world's second most expensive elections after the 2020 US presidential election.
Right, moving on, the National Internet Exchange of India launched the BhashaNet portal on Universal Acceptance Day on Thursday in New Delhi. The theme of the event was BhashaNet, Impetus Towards Universal Acceptance, which highlights NIEI's dedication to ensure people's full participation in digital world, regardless of language or script. Through Universal Acceptance Day, the National Internet Exchange of India and the Ministry of Electronics and Information Technology aim to mobilize stakeholders and raise awareness about the importance of universal acceptance readiness in today's digital landscape. The event featured sessions on the significance of universal acceptance and steps needed to achieve widespread acceptance.
We are talking about ensuring that everybody becomes part of technology. And technology essentially should not be alienating. It should not be that access to technology and digital technology is becoming all-pervasive, is something which is being used in every walk of life. A country like India, where today we have more than 800 million internet users, it becomes very important that all of them are able to use this. And this number is only going to grow. I mean, it's not going to shrink. It's going to grow at least in the next few decades. And therefore, all of them need to have the comfort that they are on equal footing when they are using the internet, when they are using digital modes of communication.
All right, now take a look at some other stories making news in India. The Vice President of India met with participants of the inaugural edition of the International Strategic Engagement Program at his residence on Thursday. It hosts 29 international delegates from 21 countries and 8 Indian officers. The governor of the southern Indian state of Karnataka rejected the temple tax bill. The governor sought a clarification as to whether similar conditions imposed on other religious institutions. The bill suggests imposition of a 5% levy on temples earning between $12,000 and less than $120,000. The Indian Army's Northern Command honored its distinguished soldiers and units for their exceptional bravery, commendable devotion to duty at a grand investiture ceremony on Thursday. The ceremony was held at Prayagraj military station in the northern Indian state of Uttar Pradesh. And still to come on DD India News Hour. Indian shuttlers PV Sindhu, Lakshya Sen and Kidambi Srikanth progressed to the second round of the Swiss Open Super 300 badminton tournament. And India to take on Afghanistan in a second round qualifying match for the FIFA World Cup 2026.
How does the world's largest democracy hold the world's biggest election? Watch Connecting the Dots to get the full picture. Every Friday at 8 p.m. IST on DD India.
You're watching DD India News Hour. I am Ramesh Ramachandran. And now to all the news in the world of sport with my colleague Deepika. Deepika, over to you.
Thanks and good afternoon, Ramesh. Let's quickly take our viewers through all that is buzzing in the world of sports. First, to begin with this news from tennis. Badminton, double Olympic medalist PV Sindhu, Lakshya Sen and Kidambi Srikanth progressed to the second round of the Swiss Open Super 300 badminton tournament in Basel. Sindhu, who had claimed the title in 2022, beat Thailand's Pornapiha Chikhuwong by 21-12, 21-13 to set up a meeting with Japan's Tomoka Miyazaki in the second round. On the other hand, Lakshya Sen, who had reached back-to-back semi-finals at French Open and All England Championships in the last 2 weeks, outlasted Malaysia's Leong Jun Hwao by 21-19, 15-21, 21-11 in 62 minutes and will next face Chinese Taipei's Chia Wao Li. On the other hand, Kidambi Srikanth, who's the former world number 1, had clinched the title in 2015 as well, outwitted world number 24 Chinese Taipei's Wang Zhuwei by 21-17 and 21-18 in a 43-minute contest. Now it was a 6th victory in 7 meetings against the opponent. Kidambi Srikanth will next face a tough opponent in Malaysia's top seed Lee Jinjiang. In women's doubles, however, Tanisha Crasto and Ashwini Punappa seeded 6th overcame Indonesia's Melisa Trias and Rachel Eliza by 21-18, 12-21, 21-19 in a thrilling opener. The world number 20 Indian pair will face Japan's Rui Hirokami and Yuna Keto next. On to soccer. At Euro 2024 qualifying playoff semi-final scheduled to take place tonight, Wales will be one victory away from Euro 2024 if they beat Finland at Cardiff City Stadium. Having failed to qualify for a major tournament between 1958 and 2016, Wales are now aiming to reach their 4th out of 5 and a 3rd successive Euros. This has been their first qualifying campaign since the retirement of Gareth Bale. On the other hand, Finland are aiming to qualify for only their 2nd major tournament, having made it to the group stage of Euro 2020 earlier. Staying on soccer, India will take on lower-ranked Afghanistan in Abha town of Saudi Arabia on Thursday in their 2nd round qualifying match of FIFA World Cup 2026. 3 points from this match can take India closer to dream of making it to the 3rd round of FIFA World Cup qualifiers, something that remains elusive ever since their first participation in the qualifiers back in 1985. The Blue Tigers will hope to build on their tally of 3 points from the World Cup qualifiers, where they beat Kuwait by 1-0 and lost by 0-3 to Qatar in November. India will again face Afghanistan in the 4th match day in Guwahati on the 26th of March. Afghanistan lost both their matches so far by big margins of 1-8 to Qatar and 0-4 to Kuwait. While India also recently occupied 2nd place in the Group A, reigning Asian champion Qatar leads the Group A while Kuwait is 2nd and Afghanistan is at the bottom of that group. Host France will play the United States to kick off the men's soccer tournament at the Paris Olympics after the two teams were drawn together. The game will be played in Marseille on the 24th of July, which is 2 days before the opening ceremony in Paris. New Zealand and the winner of a playoff between Guinea and the 4th place team in the Asian qualifying competition completes Group A. In shooting, Akhil Shoran clinched the men's 50-meter rifles 3-position competition at the ISAS Dortmund in Germany. He equaled the existing finals world record held by Czech Republic's Jiří Pravdský. Akhil, who shot 466.1 to bag his 2nd victory after he had won last week at the Polish Grand Prix, Ashu Choksi then brought more cheer for the Indian squad, winning the women's 3-position with a final score of 464.8. It was a double delight for India in the men's 3-position as Akhil's teammate Aishwarya Tomar finished 2nd with 462.9, while Great Britain's Dean Bale was 3rd at 451.2. Now, Aishwarya had posted the higher qualification score, topping the round with a scorching 596, which is a point below the existing world record as of now. On to tennis now. Great Britain's Andy Murray fought back for 4-6, 6-3 and 6-4 victory over Italy's Matteo Berrettini in the first round of the Miami Open. Murray swatted 9 aces to Berrettini's 8, saved 4 of 5 break points and never trailed following the first set. He's a 2-time champion at the event, having won back in the year 2009 and 2013. So that was a quick wrap from the world of sports. Back to you.
Thank you, Deepika. Now, before we close, there's another piece of news just for you. Remember Neuralink? Elon Musk's brain chip startup Neuralink live streamed on Wednesday its first patient implanted with a chip using his mind to play online chess. Noland Arbor, the 29-year-old patient who was paralyzed below the shoulder after a diving accident, played chess on his laptop and moved the cursor using the Neuralink device. The implant seeks to enable people to control a computer cursor or keyboard using only their thoughts.
The surgery was super easy. I literally was released from the hospital a day later. I have no cognitive impairments. I had basically given up on playing that game. Y'all gave me the ability to do that again, and I played it for 8 hours that day.
And with that, it's a wrap on this edition of DD India News Hour. Let us know your thoughts on the news of the day. You can connect with us on Facebook, X and Instagram. You can also check out our website ddindia.co.in. We'll be back with more news as it breaks here on DD India. I'm Ramesh Ramachandran from all of us here in New Delhi. Thanks for watching DD India News Hour.